welcome you guys. We got folks joining. I'm seeing folks joining in the room right now. We can't see you yet, but we see you're coming in. We see Craig, Callie, Lauren, Karina. Oh, I see Jeff there. What's up, Jeff? Ellen, Callie, Abigail. You guys, we're so glad you're here. If you are just entering the room, click the chat button. Do me a favor, click the chat button. Tell us where you are coming from. I see Jen. I see Megan East. Don't worry, we can't see you. We just see your name in the room as one of our folks attending. If you have kids in the background, dogs barking in the background, if you're still in your PJs today, or if you're joining from somewhere across the world and you're in your PJs because it's nighttime, don't worry. But we want to know where you're coming from today. Callie's saying Lindstrom, Minnesota. I see Nathan and Ryan, Josh. Where are you guys all joining from? Brandon. So we have Abigail from Central Wisconsin. Good folks in good places. Peyton, you are joining from not too far from where I am in the illustrious Duluth, Minnesota. Well, Leslie's joining us from Erie, PA. And Ellen is joining us all the way from Estonia. So good you're with us, Ellen. Way to go. Peyton, how are things today on your side of Duluth as we kick off and get everybody in the room here?
Hey everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Justin and I are so close but so far. I'm in Duluth, Minnesota as well, typically just right next to Justin in the office, but took a little space to be home today to be with all of you. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Megan East is joining us from Copper Harbor, but in Traverse City today. Traverse City is one of your favorite places in the world, Peyton. That sort of area of Michigan I know is near and dear
Yes.
to you.
Yes, very much so.
So you guys, as more folks join in the room, again, like I said, feel free to jump in and let us know where you're coming from. We have a lot to cover today, so we want to kind of get right to it. As we begin, let me say what this room is about for us. We do monthly webinars specifically to sauna business entrepreneurs who are looking to start something anywhere across the world in the form of thermic bathing facilities. That looks like scrappy mobile sauna upstarts and fleets, all the way up to immaculate bathhouses in large spaces and in big cities. And we create this space to make sure we are hitting the important things you need as a business. Let's get in there. Let's learn together. Let's focus together on all that. Today we have a big deep dive on staffing. It's going to be great. And you have Peyton with us to drop all the wisdom. Before we get there, I just want to say we want to make sure this is a conversational space. We want to talk with you. We want to dive in together with you. And the way we're going to do that is please ask questions. We're going to ask you questions. We've already asked you to tell us where you're coming from in the chat. So lean in with us, stay engaged, stay interactive. This isn't just the YouTube video unless you're watching it on YouTube later. So dive in with that. We do want to hear and Lindsay's going to just drop a little poll at the beginning of every session. We kind of take a look and say, who's in the room? And in what ways are you interested in the business of sauna? And one could be, I love supporting as an enthusiast. Maybe that's you. You're here because you love that and you want to know, why are these people getting, how do they have a job in all of this? I want to support them. Maybe you're somebody who's starting. You're in those visioning phases or you're starting to do a build out. You're thinking in a lot of ways. Doors aren't open yet. Or maybe you're somebody who the doors are open and you're like, am I the only crazy person who's running a business like this? I want to be with my people. Don't worry, you're with your people. These are the folks that care about all this. Ryan Campbell from Pittsburgh, PA, Emily from Martha's Vineyard, and Josh from California. Great to see you guys joining us and jumping in here as well. Hit that button of where are you at and in the poll, and then we'll come back to that and kind of just get a quick glance and see who is in the room. Now, I'm gonna come back and just talk a little bit about our topic today and who's going to be joining us. So we, as a business, we think a lot about it's a human-centered business. We're not just selling you a widget. We're not just selling you a service. Your whole body joins the service, right? You're a part of what's going on. And so a lot of the calls that we've done on this, specifically in conversations, are centered around design, space and flow, how to be successful. We would say that one of the key components of being successful is your people. And so today we're talking all about how to hire, train, and empower your staff. And we get to do that with, I would say, one of the nation's foremost experts in how to do that. Now, Peyton's not going to receive that very well. I don't know if she's going to take that. But Peyton, you are our director of experience here at Cedar and Stone. You've helped guide our teams from very small upstart moments to now kind of hosting multiple locations, tens of thousands of people, lots of team members and training. And so it's just a joy to have you on this call and to be talking about all the things that we get to do all the time, not just internal, but also external to the world. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for providing your expertise. You're, we're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I receive it in this moment, so thank you very much.
So as people are, we got a Megan East is saying, "Go Peyton, you're amazing. Take that." I like that sentiment, Megan. Thank you, thank you. So you guys, let's kind of dive in together. Our first content section is we're going to talk about hiring. And to talk about hiring, we need to talk about the type of business you're running. And we have a lot of different types of thermic bathing experiences. And so we can get into some nuance with you guys on this. We do want to sketch what that looks like. To begin, Peyton, talk a little bit about what you've watched here with Cedar and Stone, what you've stewarded to grow, and kind of some of the decisions and assumptions and principles we take in that. You joined us early on, so many years ago, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this person has so much talent. Let's get them on the team." What's it look like, sort of, as we built the team together over these last 5 years?
Sure. So going back to 2020, which is a year I feel like we all kind of have our own context and memories and perception of, I moved to Duluth, Minnesota, kind of on a whim. I was pulled to this place for a few different reasons. And my background is actually in really high touch kind of hospitality and service in a few different contexts, from direct care and providing a lot of support for adults with special needs was actually in my background, as well as fine dining and kind of everything in between. And I found my way to kind of cold calling Cedar and Stone and being curious about what it looked like to kind of facilitate with this wellness intersection, which as a consumer, I was really familiar with. But from the facilitation standpoint, that specific thing was pretty new to me. So when I joined the team, I was one of two sauna guides. And what was most impactful for me at that time and at that scale was we had one sauna and it fit, 10-ish adult bodies. But due to the context of the pandemic, it was a hyper kind of private and customized experience. And I'd love to speak with you anytime about just all of the kind of profound and potent moments that we were able to have with the guests that were joining us at that time. However, as you can imagine, I would say we were hosting a lot of people, but again, in this very kind of private context. So there's a lot to say there, but that's how I started. And over time, we've grown, expanded, scaled to be in multiple different cities. Now, kind of our flagship location looks quite different. That original building is one of a few, and we are now operating in Duluth, Minnesota, as well as Minneapolis, and hosting tens of thousands of people every year. And when I think about the success or how we deem those spaces as successful, it really comes back to this kind of service and hospitality nugget that I mentioned at the beginning. So, yeah, that's kind of a start of the arc. And in general, just commitment to great training and people who want to be around and facilitate this experience as we've grown, has been something I'm really proud to be a part of.
And y'all probably do remember those hard moments of the pandemic when the world got turned upside down. And inviting folks to sort of breathe together in the sauna was a hard ask in those very early days. And what we found was in the heart of it, when people were isolated and alone, it was one of the most healthy, freeing, and sort of deeply important moments that Peyton was highlighting there. And I think now that we've watched this trajectory of, I think many people are maybe on this call because the movement is happening. The world is discovering these old practices and saying, how do we contextualize them for the modern world and also for our cities and towns and communities? I think what we're seeing is this broader commitment to continual care. And Peyton said some specific assumptions and sort of principles there around hosting, hospitality, service. Um, and we want to bring those up early because those are actually going to change the kinds of roles and the kinds of jobs that you are going to need to hire for, and the kinds of people probably well fitted and well designed and well trained for those roles. Peyton, will you talk a little bit about, assuming what we're assuming of our type of business, hospitality led, commitment to sort of knowing who's in the room, often reading the room. Let's get into what are the types of roles you often hire for, and what are the kinds of qualities you're looking for in those people specifically? Let's unpack. Let's start there.
Yeah, of course. When we think about growing our team, one of the common threads is almost something that's a little bit hard to train, I would say, which is this EQ, this emotional intelligence. And what I mean by that is the ability to read a room, as Justin mentioned, more specifically, how to facilitate. So, a lot of the questions and a lot of the kind of virtues that get sifted out, the common thread between all these different types of people that work for us, um, truly is this ability to responsibly, and there are some principles under that that I'd love to touch on at some point, but responsibly and compassionately facilitate. And those virtues and those skills are actually required in so many different jobs in our market. You're very rarely going to have someone walk in the door that has specific experience guiding sauna. It has happened, but it doesn't happen very frequently. So I would say facilitation, teaching experience, service experience, hospitality are some of the common threads of the folks that come our way. And the positions that I'm hiring for most often are in our business, we call it the sauna guide. So that is the kind of primary person who is engaging with the guests at any given time. And then I am also developing and hiring their management structure. So the general and assistant managers of any given space. So really kind of the heart of it is how to support and develop this guide position through both management and then of course the development of the role itself.
So those are the kinds of people, and I just as people begin to start saying, well, what are the staff that I need, right? They're going to begin to put themselves on a spectrum of, whoa, do I need somebody like that who can read the room, to assess what's going on, to hear from them and have a really high emotional EQ to hold space? Um, or do I need somebody that's maybe a trainer? I'm my concept is more around fitness and walking through key steps and walking through protocols. Or there might be a scenario where you're actually guidance is not your deal. You're dialing that way back and you're saying, I need welcomers, I need cleaning people, I need people to make sure the strategies of the room are perfect every time somebody walks in and the towels are folded and perfect. Peyton, will you describe some of just briefly maybe those accessory roles that any business is going to need? Because I think sometimes one of the assumptions people look at is when they say, oh, look, it's a sauna and a cold plunge. Like, you don't need labor to manage those. You just need somebody smiling and saying welcome. I think we see different takes on that question, right? And labor can be put in a few different areas. What are some of these accessory needs that you've rolled into Sauna Guide, right? It really does. It's a very omni-skilled person. But what are those other specific needs?
Sure. Yeah, as Justin mentioned, at our business, we do kind of contain all of those responsibilities into one type of role. But what I think might be helpful is to kind of break down particular responsibilities. So, regardless of what kind of offering you're trying to have, the staff is actually executing what your vision is as a business owner. So I guess I would sort of reverse engineer and ask the question a little bit differently, which is what kind of offering, what kind of space, what kind of experience are you trying to offer your people, your market, your customers? And then kind of offering a variety of positions that you believe will not only at the beginning when it's exciting and hyped up, but over time as it grows, is going to be able to sustain that with you. So those types of things are everything from, I've focused up until this point in the conversation very much the kind of customer facing facilitator role. I also think facilities management is just as, if not more important. General customer service experience. So it's when I think about the customer journey or designing an experience, if you're a business owner, that begins, before people even step on the property. So thinking about what it looks like for people to be able to manage customer service remotely via booking softwares or other customer service kind of avenues. So things like that.
Now, if you guys are already spinning with questions, we would love to hear them. We don't want to save them till the very end. And I think there's a lot of them that are coming in. We've had a few that are coming in already. And I think there's some good things to get into here. One of which is we've already started bringing up there's multiple different roles that could be wrapped in. And I would say for some folks, as you're thinking, the bigger facility you have, if this spectrum that I laid out before was guidance, the other up and down is scale. And the bigger scale you have, the more likely you're going to have specialists in these areas. You're going to have full facilities and maintenance team. You're going to have full cleaning teams. You're going to have hospitality teams. You're going to have trainers and guides who are, the Aufgussmaster, the sauna guide, the instructor to walk people through that probably aren't going to do as many of those other tasks. And that's a scale question. If it's small and intimate in space or startup in first phases, it's very likely that you're going to have people wear a lot of hats. And so just to kind of go through the market, there's probably folks on this call who have seen beautiful examples of big scale Nordic spa bathhouses. You have a fully fledged team to hire for with lots of specialties in there. And you've probably heard, like I sent over in the chat, we have Jacqueline on the call. Jacqueline was in Vogue this last couple of weeks. Vogue magazine, the fanciest, so chic. And talking about Jacqueline's community in South Central Wisconsin, specifically highlighting kind of small grassroots community-led sauna businesses that are growing. And I think that for folks as they're listening, hey, where do you want to put yourself as you start up? Are you going to be like Leo's on this call? I think we've had him here before. Leo, you're one of like Peyton's favorite people. I'm going to just say that whenever you get referenced on our team in the week to week, it's always with smiles and joy. Leo's founded World Spa. You could go check out our big conversation of World Spa and design there in Brooklyn, which can host 300 plus people in one hour, like at a time. And so Leo has a lot of different layers of staffing needs and offerings all in there. And Peyton, I love how you brought it back to kind of key offerings. Let's design around those core offerings. Now, as we go, people are starting to ask nitty-gritty questions about that. We're going to get into a few of those, and then I just invite you to keep asking. So Peyton, before we get out of hiring, we're going to go into training in a minute. Um, I do think there's always the question of cleaning and sanitation and all the stuff. We get this question all the time, all the time, all the time. Give your best sort of like super high level overview on what you have to do for cleaning to make sure a space is great for anybody in there.
Yeah, of course. My somewhat unhelpful answer is that it does depend on what type of business you're running. So there are certain regulations if you, for example, fall under a pool to a certain degree. There are very clear kind of guidelines of what it looks like to upkeep something like that, versus something like a wood-fired sauna that's mobile and you pop it up on the beach on the weekends and kind of everything in between. So I think it looks really different. I will say more from a principle standpoint, we take cleanliness really seriously. And what that looks like for us is just really prioritizing a space that, if we are not only selling, but often promising a stress relieving environment, we believe a big kind of portion of that is a clean and tidy space that smells neutral or fantastic, hopefully somewhere in between, and things of that nature. So I would say for us, it's really important. We have pretty thorough cleaning protocols that we've developed over the past 5 years. But like I said, it's very dependent on what type of facility you're running.
Yeah, if I add on that, just like a helpful analogy for a lot of people is when you show up at the restaurant, it's always nice when the table's clean. When you go sit down, it's not as nice when it's like, oh man, they don't have enough staff here to like turn the tables and clean the tables for me to get in. That experience we want in any moment for sauna. That feeling of it smells neutral or fantastic is a really good metric to, wow, that space should be great when I walk in. Um, that will really depend on also a lot of your programming and how you run that. We do a lot of cleaning between. Now, there's also that question was anonymous, so I don't know who's saying. There are also some questions just around what products to use. We'll save those. There are some details. We can send over some resources on that. The short answer is mild soaps and like not chemical oriented cleaners. The more natural, the better. And you're usually cleaning natural wood, so you want to be careful about that. There's other good questions here, Peyton, around first employees. So we're going to talk about training in a minute, but let's talk when you're getting into that moment of, hey, we're just starting to build the team. What are the kinds of things you're looking for in those first few people to carry the vision forward, to sort of understand the values, to understand how it works? And I'll say maybe both like the tangibles, what skills do they need? And also the intangibles. Are there some other things you're looking for in those first people that are kind of pretty core and important to coming onto a team at the very beginning?
Sure. Some of the more tangible things I would say are kind of the ability to, as much as you're comfortable as a business owner, having them actually understand how to, for example, manage the CRM or the booking software. So what does it look like to take, the customer service portion off of your plate as a business owner? That would be a great example. I also think in general, someone who is, or some people who really take a sense of ownership, not only of the vision, but of the space and of the experience. And, I would argue that actually, as the business owner, as their leader, their boss, you're instilling what those expectations are, and then hoping that they, almost do it better than you, leave it better than you found it, kind of thing. So finding someone who has really a passion for it and yeah, just an interest to serve people.
As somebody who was in that role, there's a couple of people asking about first employees. Um, I want to just speak directly to this entrepreneur, startup person, the owner, and just kind of simply say what Peyton said there is you do want to find people who are smarter and better than you at a lot of these things. And just because you're the starter person doesn't necessarily mean you're good at building systems and managing those systems. You do need to know how to do those things, but I would want to sort of just communicate back to you, try to find those people that really do have that ownership of the space. How you get that is often by casting a really impactful vision of what you're trying to do in the world, in your community, and with the business. And the more you do that, I've just seen again and again, if you're casting really clear vision for what we're trying to do, how we're trying to serve the world, the ways in which sauna and cold water swimming and cold plunging and these thermic bathing elements like impact people's lives deeply. I know there are people in your community who are going to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. How can I step up and be a part of this? This was nice to enjoy once. What does it look like for me to help make this thing happen? But as an owner, you actually have to give up a thing that as owners, we don't like to give up very often, and that's control. And we have to trust that the people around us also are doing that thing so that more people can have it. And so feel free to push back, feel free to like get really real with yourself around, is that an area where you're trying to hold this thing really specific and you're curating a one-on-one moment? Or you're trying to build a team to host way more people for those types of curated moments, and you'll be surprised at how much better often they are when they're not just in your hands. Um, and Peyton, I think you've done a tremendous job of that, taking sort of these early nuggets of vision to a broader team. And now we're on sort of multiple generations of guides. And I would say the service oftentimes has gotten better and more unique. Um, we're going to get into training here, but let's talk. I just want to kind of highlight if somebody's looking for a resource on this, we had sent them out a little bit ago. What are your kind of top resources as you think about hiring, creating space for people, hospitality around these sorts of things? And then we're going to go deep into training.
Sure. Yeah, so I think in terms of resources, I've been really privileged to be able to learn from a really wide variety of different resources. But a few that stand out to me right off the bat is Unreasonable Hospitality, which I believe we sent your way, and just kind of the general principles of a really high bar of service and hospitality. There was a line that I heard recently where they were actually a professional in this space was describing the difference actually between service and hospitality and kind of talking about these two different things. And this person was describing the feeling of what it looks like to get great service. And the line that they said was, it just felt like they were expecting me. And I love that so much. So kind of this feeling of that the staff is expecting you and they're really looking forward to serving you. So we can come back to that. And then second is the body keeps the score. And the reason I bring this resource forward is that a lot of the principles that are woven into our training are trauma informed. And the reason for that is that we are hoping that if we pepper in some of those principles, we are going to be able to serve more people and not just quantity, but different types of people. So it's another way to be accessible is that we really are kind of reactive in our approach versus directive. So those are two that bubble to the surface, but that's certainly not exhaustive.
Two really helpful ones. Click those links, grab those books, ingest all the goodness in them. And Josh is saying right now, these are great resources, super inspiring. And I think these are the kinds of things that we really do want to put as a forefront to a lot of these kinds of businesses. We need to be honest about the sort of hospitality components of it, setting the table for people, being ready for them. Um, because, when it's working well, you want them to feel cared for. And there's a question around challenge in here, right? Is this a workout facility? And so often we're hearing a lot right now in the probably in all of your feeds. Your algorithm is figured out that you're interested in sauna and cold plunge, and it's serving you a lot of sort of fitness-based content, which that would probably differ. So Peyton, let's talk a little bit now about training. What are the types of things when you welcome somebody in? What are the steps we bring somebody into to get them ready? There's been some good questions already. Let's think broadly about training principles and then skill sets, and then maybe, yeah, let's differ it a little bit. But broadly, how do you think about training new employees as they start?
Great. When we think about training new employees, there are a few kind of primary principles. One of them has been described a little bit already, but this kind of idea that we're not directing, we are reacting and kind of intuiting how to serve a lot of different types of people. So you will see that kind of throughout the bulk of our training. We also try to make sure that we have different types of resources for new staff members based on kind of learning styles and general experience. So we have, such a pretty big library of training resources. So those are everything from videos that have been recorded in the space over time, really thorough documents that are SOPs or standard operating procedures. And then we also have a multi-step in-person training process that is very collaborative. And that experience is actually, there are certain, of course, markers of success that we set at the beginning and what we would deem a successful training. However, that training period is quite tailored to the person that we are training. And the hope is that they are able to be kind of a co-creator in that experience. One of the things that I say really, really often to my teams, and then as well as when I'm coaching in our Sauna Business Accelerator, is that as a person who really appreciates having a clear and tidy plan, you can train on the front end with online resources and documents and all the things. And bodies in space actually give us the most information. So that's a big principle that I'd hope you kind of walk away with when you think about opening a business that is actually so centered on bodies and sensation and connection and humanness is you can train people all you want on the front end. However, successful, I think, integration of that training is very much, I don't know, a dance, for lack of a better word, with the bodies that are coming into your space and kind of not only taking up and filling up that space, but giving you feedback, whether it be verbal or otherwise.
What's an example of that, Peyton? What's an example of we've had great intentions for training and let's do this way, and then we discovered throughout the process of hosting people, oh wait, that didn't work, or we could do this different. Do you have anything sort of top of mind where the bodies gave us really important information that then got woven back into experience afterwards?
Sure. So I'll give two examples. One of them is a not cute example that's very facilities maintenance oriented. So, I mentioned at the beginning, we're really passionate and committed to a really clean environment, an environment that looks, feels, and is clean. But one of the things you don't anticipate is how much water drips off of these bodies into puddles that you're not expecting. So, I guess what I mean by that really specifically is you kind of learn where these kind of hot, wet spots end up being, and therefore needing to train and kind of maintain the space in a certain way so that you can again, kind of maintain your own standard. So that's an example of we actually are watching bodies move through these facilities that we spend so much time kind of talking about. But truly, slippage and puddles and all of that stuff. So that's sort of a facilities answer. And then I would say from the facilitation side, we're learning new things all the time. I mean, truly the list is endless. One of the things that we're consistently kind of learning about is what it looks like to kind of permission people to go at their own pace. So that's kind of broad, and it's a common thread of the lot of the things that we end up adjusting in the way that we guide. So for example, someone coming in and having a particular sensation that maybe we haven't even heard about or anticipated before, and using that as a tool to serve people better in the future.
I love it. So good. The bodies give us the information. Peyton, talk a little bit in this broader theme of training. Uh, this like myth that, lowered staffing is cheaper. We have people talking about maintenance. We have people asking, what does it really look like? And, I think we've come back to this broader commitment to making sure everything's great, beautiful, clean, smells nice and spotless. Um, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of business owners are also trying to manage both labor costs and revenue in. And I think there's sometimes a temptation to say, "Oh yeah, it's cheaper to cut labor." How do you see that playing out in the real world of operating month to month with the team?
Sure. So again, this goes back to your offering. And Justin's point here, I think, is really important, which is, when we're talking about this spectrum that's been coming up a bit around what type of experience you're hoping to host or own, we are looking at something like, and I've had the privilege of being at multiple different types of spaces like this, and I've loved every moment. So there's sort of one end of the spectrum where you are a paying guest who's coming into a space and basically navigating a facility at your own pace. So you might be going in and out of different types of pools, different types of hot rooms, different types of cold experiences. And it's you and your friends, and you're there and you're chatting, and there's no one necessarily coaching or guiding you through something. And then on the other end of the spectrum, what you are doing is kind of opting into more of a class structure, for example, where you are truly being coached and directed of how to be there, how to be in the space, etc. There's neither is better than the other. However, I think the big misconception is that over here, this sort of free flow facility model, you better believe that when I glance up, I still see a staff member. Maybe they're not guiding me or telling or directing or coaching me on how to be, but they're refilling water and tea. They're wiping things up. They're mopping something. They are, um, maintaining some part of the facility, etc. So I think the kind of debunking thing here is that even if you're choosing not to have a highly guided experience, that you don't need to invest in great people.
Absolutely. I love that. Uh, Also, Megan is highlighting here. She said, I love the permission for people who don't own their speed. Love when a person who is new to sauna or is solo, they don't have to compare themselves to friend A, maybe who goes every single day. I think there's a broader theme in that, Megan, of the North American market is starting to mature. There's lots of ways that people are envisioning their business and helping people experience this. The ways that we can offer these are sort of nearly endless right now. And we have some really good recipes from traditions all over the world called deep cultural practice to help make sure people sort of see, feel, and understand. Um, I would just say, as we're thinking about training, that should be part of it. We should be helping people discover these practices uh, in their origins, and we probably want to help people be really geeky about that, right? Like we want to, everybody on this call, we're like the 3% of people who care about these weird niche topics of sauna and thermic bathing at these levels. This is not every day for most people. And so getting yourself in that mind frame, not of you, who's the expert, the geek, has the vocabulary, has the understanding, but what is that person who walks in the door because their friend told them this was fun. And that's the amount of information they have. And I think it really brings up the need that you're saying, Peyton, of having knowledgeable, caring, and accessible staff members to ask questions to sort of hear, what am I supposed to do in this space? How do I navigate the space? People don't want to feel awkward when they walk into any business. They want to sort of know how to navigate or be told how to navigate. Um, I'm going to have Lindsay send over an example here of a really great example of a highly guided experience. I would point to a couple favorite friends on this. One is Annette Scott and her work with the Revivery and Kodawari Studios. And just take a peek at the Revivery training. We've hosted one of the trainings. They're hosting them all over the country. Um, uh, uh, Peyton, you are certified R1, Rev 1 certified Revivery guide. Can you just sketch for people who sort of are interested in this a little more directed instructor led? Um, what does that look like? What could it look like to be a little more front facing on here? Let's walk you through the process.
Sure. So Revivery is a great example of a training like this and a really great container to learn how to do it, both with intention and responsibility. What it can look like is, the best way of describing it from my view is it's a class. So you're going in and you're opting into a moment with other people where you are going to be directed and coached by someone who is situated as the authority, the coach, the facilitator, and they are going to be kind of directing the group to move about the facility as a unit. And there may even be things as specific as this is what we're going to talk about when we're in here. This is how long we're going to be in here. And of course, there are ways that that can get shaken up and changed based on individual needs. But in general, we are in this thing together. And Revivery is a really successful example of that.
Yeah, Jeff asked a question here specifically around this. He
Mhm.
says, please talk about staff operating from a script slash protocol versus employee autonomy. And I think what we tried to do here, Jeff, is sketch out those two versions of operations. And sometimes it's full, like that's you only do that one offering, fully protocol, fully scripted. Sometimes it's lots of autonomy. And sometimes it's programming at key amounts of time. And so I think we see that in larger facilities where they're going to let there be a lot of autonomy, both for staff and for guests. And then at certain times, they're providing key moments of more protocol and scripted work. I would say generally for new staff, having them supported with scripts and protocols, and here's general flow, here's how to read the room, here's how we think about these things, are the training wheels to get them feeling more autonomous and embodied and like they can sort of riff on their own stories about why sound is important to them, why these practices are good for them. um, you kind of want that in, like, think of other industries, right? You want your yoga teacher to also be practicing yoga. You want them to know their stuff also and doing it in their own life so that they can pass it on. I would say that a lot about sort of our front-facing staff, or our staff who are sort of front of house working with folks, that they're some of your best salespeople, they're some of your best question answers, they're some of your best advocates for the work you're doing in the brand. Peyton, before we hop out of training to empowering, anything else that you want to sort of make sure you highlight on that kind of training side that feels super important or, critical around safety needs and other things like that? We've riffed on those pieces as well. Anything else you'd add there?
Sure. So, one of the things that is inherently true about a business like this is that there is kind of inherent risk and physical or physiological exercise and strain in some ways, kind of challenge by choice in some ways to what we're doing. And, the responsibility that we take at Cedar and Stone is a responsible witness to that and an awareness that that is true, and kind of allowing people to have their experience within that container and hopefully inviting people with lots of different backgrounds. Everyone that, does it every day from home and is in a 34-degree cold plunge for 2 minutes every morning, to the person who got drug along by a friend and has no idea what they're getting into. All of those people, I believe, we believe, should be kind of witnessed with the lens of safety and well-being in mind. So when it comes to training, we are really diligent about some of the inherent risks of engaging in a facility like this. And in my experience, the more that you can, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but the more you can empower your staff to have as much information as possible, it becomes less overwhelming, less scary, less this is on me to fix it. If something, God forbid, were to kind of go sideways. So I think in general, safety is a really big principle of our training, and it's nuanced. And hopefully, most people who are engaging in your facility trust that the people who are working on site, regardless of their relationship to them based on the offering, that they can hold it down and answer questions because everybody kind of comes in a little nervous. So there's like a kind of intangible safety as well as an importance of just truly being safe on premises.
So as we shift gears from training to empowering, some resources to take a look at around training that I think would be helpful. I think you're right on, Peyton. This is a very physiological, active business, and your insurance companies will need to. They'll ask you about that. Oh boy, will they ask you? How are you caring about safety? So as a business owner, thinking about fire safety and suppression, thinking about CPR certification for key staff members, and then thinking about like the general principles of what is true about these practices in human lives, both hot and cold. We would point to Susanna Soberg's book specifically called Winter Swimming. It does a good job of pretty high level overviews there, and it allows some deeper dives into the science and the operational stuff of that, where we looked at that along with a number of other books as we train staff, right? We want to get them geeking out with us on the day-to-day of how do these things actually work, and what are we shooting for. I would be careful to shoot for the go as hard as you can American competition method that we see so often when you're looking at some of these, the CrossFit gym, the Joe Rogan, that is push, 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 and that equals better for you. I would say the majority of these practices worldwide are not about enduring, but rather about enjoying, and good comes with it. One of our key phrases, and Peyton, this was you, is this like, wellness shouldn't be overwhelming. And I think that's one of the goals here, is to try to get people into these practices that are understood and simple and good for us, even though it's counterintuitive. We don't have to strain very hard to get to the good for doing them. Let's talk about empowerment. Let's talk about staff, keeping them, retaining them, making sure they're great and engaged. I want to get into like hiring and payment and sort of how do we pay people well and a living wage and all those kinds of things. But broadly, talk at the beginning here, Peyton, around how do we empower for kind of just principles of having a radical space and a great place to work. Let's begin there. What are the things that you want to do and want to be true on your team every time folks come to work?
Sure. So in general, a lot of what we talk about, in other kind of markets that I've been involved in and other types of kind of service and hospitality spaces, the language around it is very, what is the moment between you as the employee and the guest? That's like so much of what we focus on. And it's so much about service to and sort of that exchange, that transaction. And what I've found is just as much energy actually needs to be put into the reactions that happen from coworker to coworker, collaborator and co-collaborator, and then as well as, manager to manager, manager to team, and just kind of injecting some of those principles that, are so important as business owners and leaders. Like we know we want to give the guests this amazing experience. I would argue that that actually doesn't happen unless that same level of effort, or perhaps even more, is injected into the culture of the team. And with all of that being said, it's still a job, it's still work, it can still be really hard dealing with human beings, working with human beings can be challenging. And if we believe in any sort of intangible, energetic reality about being in a space, and we hope that the impact on guests is a stress relieving environment, for example, the only way we authentically not only do that once, but keep doing it is if the people who are facilitating also understand how to access stress relief, also understand how to access abundance, peace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever those principles are. And what's helpful about the type of business that you want to open is that there are lots of resources of how people can possibly access rest and connection. So, a tangible example of how to do this is making sure your people have a lot of access to this place that is serving well-being and connection. So that's an example. That's one way to do that. But more than anything, I think that just applying the emphasis on that as much as you do with the guest exchange is something that I'm really committed to.
It's one of those things that's hard to quantify till you're starting in it and you're starting to grow the team. And I think you need that is so important to make sure your team has those spaces. We don't want to be the ones who are the stress relieving company, the people that are, trying to provide this service and also are frantic and the most stressed when they're at work every day. It's really easy to fall into those things, especially if you're seeing a lot of people come through, if you're seeing growth, if you have problems along the way. Yeah, work is hard, no matter what. Like that's going to be a reality. What are the ways that you're caring about your team as it continues to grow and develop? Who are the leaders on the team to support, and who are your leaders of leaders to support? So I think that's really helpful, Peyton, to kind of highlight those specifics there. What are the ways then you see, let's real quickly, let's talk about leaders. What do you see when you have leaders come in and you say, "Oh, this is the person who also can train and support and not just work in the day-to-day in a key role." Talk a little bit about that because over the years you're going to have more folks come through that'll be on your team for a while than are those leaders, but you want to take advantage when you have leadership budding to cultivate it. Highlight a couple of your thoughts around that.
Sure. So I would say in general, if you are a business owner or even a manager that has relatively frequent asks from your team to do more, take on more, what opportunities are there for me to be more involved here? I would say it's a pretty potent measure of success that they want to both be a part of and potentially emulate some of the principles of leadership that are existing among the team. So that's just something to kind of watch out for over time. I would say the opposite of that experience are people like, whoa, the manager seems stressed out. I don't want that to be me, for example. You're sort of looking for the opposite of that, of, oh, interesting. What opportunities might be there for me? So that's kind of one thing to watch for in the early years. And then in terms of principles of good or great leaders, from my perspective, are people that have this real ability to be quite boundaried. And I'll kind of go into that a bit more specifically. That's a word that's thrown around quite a bit. But what I mean by that is as a leader, you are able to be not boundaried in the way of closed off, but boundaried in the way where you're actually permissioning that people can both meet your expectations and the business's expectations for excellence, or whatever the business's expectations are, while also bringing their whole being to the position in a container that's safe. And I would say a successful leader is interested in both of those things. And in order for both of those things to be true, you are an excellent communicator. You provide a culture that has frequent feedback, reciprocal feedback, where leaders are open to receiving feedback. I think that's a really um, can be a hard thing to find. I think people are open to giving others feedback, and it's difficult to reciprocate that often. So those are kind of some general principles that I've seen in successful leaders that I've worked with.
Yeah. And lastly, in terms of empowerment, I think we're in a world right now where inflation's going up, life is expensive, um, and there are some assumptions around when you, as a business owner, are going to hire people that you're going to need to ask some important questions around what does it look like to pay these folks? How are they paid? In what ways are they supported and paid? And especially financially. Um, and I'll say just broadly, one of the things that you're going to really need to do is do a lot of true number crunching on what can work for the business model, what can it afford, and also what your value is for people. And that hope of saying, hey, how much are these people working? What are the types of base rates that you're paying them, whether that's hourly or salaried? And then also, what are the additional benefits that the business is going to provide to those folks? Um, that will be harder to do at the beginning, but so needed to do at the beginning. So needed to ask, how are you going to invest in your people? And we've seen it done a lot of different ways. You can contract employees and they can be, 1099 from you. They kind of act as a trainer coming in, but you don't have as much ability to support them maybe in a lot of different ways. You usually just provide them with a little bit of a higher base rate. Maybe it's class-based. This is how a lot of yoga studios run. And we also see a lot of folks that are continually with us in part-time roles, wanting to do that job more than just a side gig. And so asking you the question of how much somebody's working for you. As somebody said on the call earlier, I'm a scrappy startup. What do you think about this? How does it work? It's great to provide people for trade at the beginning, but at some point you're going to want to say, hey, like we really want to invest in you as a person. We think, this is a fair wage for what we're able to provide as a business for you as an employee. And gratuity can go a long way. And so that was asked in here a little bit. Somebody was asking about gratuity. We see it when people give great experiences of hospitality and service. People feel a desire to give back and to sort of say, hey, I do want to tip my guide. I do want to give a gratuity. Now, we're also in a world where you get asked to tip somebody on the iPad in every single way. You can go to lots of businesses now. And so I think there is a little bit of a hesitancy for some consumers to tip in every moment. I don't think that's true when folks have a great experience. I think it's really an issue when folks are handed, they go make their own froyo, and then they walk up and it says, do you want to tip your person? You say, I didn't, I did it all myself. So thinking about those big questions of how are you going to empower your people and how are you going to pay them? What can the business afford? How valuable are our people? Those questions get to retention, support, long-term care, and how you're going to sort of invest in people for the long term. So there's some key things there that I just want to say aloud from business owner to other startup business owners here. We're running low on time, so I want to kind of land the plane. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them. But I will say this, if this was helpful, we do this every month. Join us again for one of these. Also, what's been brought up is we have a couple different courses that if you're finding this helpful, that you can go at a deeper dive. One is an on-demand course called Sweat Equity. That is specific to the kind of health benefits, social, emotional, and physical benefits around sauna practice. Um, and that would be a good thing for you to dive into and geek out on. It's also a great thing for staffs. We see that a lot as people are sort of, what are some good key resources to train on? Where do we get the best of the best? That one is myself and Annette Scott from the Revivery you mentioned earlier, doing a course where you can buy that on-demand course for each staff member and say, hey, we want to get you understanding the basics. Peyton, would you add anything to that? Because it's not also how to guide people as much as it's, there are some components in there, but would you say anything else about sweat equity as it where it fits in your sort of training competencies package?
Sure. I mean, I think you nailed it. The real thing that we're using that for internally is how to further bolster the team with kind of health benefit, physiological impact. For us, we are not only, for example, a recovery facility, and we want to be up on all the recent research and all the awesome stuff that's coming out about sauna and cold plunge. And we want to be able to answer those questions with confidence. So I've seen that sweat equity course be really helpful to just build a good arsenal of knowledge.
Yeah. And if you are an entrepreneur on the call and you're working on starting up a thing, and you find this as helpful, you could get coached by Peyton Stasiak in a monthly or weekly experience, and that is through our Sauna Business Accelerator. And we work with businesses around North America and even broader. We have some folks from abroad who have joined that. We've had 85 businesses as a part of that over the years. And right now, we are rolling admission every month. We have, 1 to 5 new businesses coming in and starting up with us on their journey. And that really is kind of 12 months of lots of support in every area of your business. Peyton, who is that best for? Who do you see the most successful folks coming through Sound Business Accelerator?
Sure. So success in the accelerator truly is what you put into it. I really mean that. So I think folks who are interested, curious, and committed to open an experience-based thermic bathing facility, whatever scale, whatever type of offering, and that SBA and the coaching that exists within that is really to just kind of be your team to supercharge your vision and kind of bring the vision into reality. So yeah, I would just say folks who want to open a business like this, you are more than welcome.
So you guys, thank you so much again. This is recorded, and if you want to go back and watch any bits and sort of get to what Peyton said on how did we do that? How did they do that? How can we get there? This will all be up on our blog soon. And there are some links that are sent over now in the chat, as well as will be sent over in that blog post to go into it. We got folks saying, grateful, thank you so much. Thanks for all the shared content. And mostly to you, Peyton, thank you so much for being the kind of expert leader who cares deeply about humans in space, hospitality, and making sure those folks who we bring on are trained well and empowered to do great work every single day. It's been a joy to continue to work with you over all these years, and now I'm loving that we're getting you on camera, sending it to the world, not just the internal conversation. So thanks for being here today, Peyton.
It took 5 years, so we'll see how many years it takes for me to be on the next one. But thank you so much. Really grateful to everybody who was here listening. Just appreciate you very much. Thanks for doing this work.
All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.